Talking Buckeyes here at the Voice of College Football. Please like the video, share these videos out on social media, because if you enjoy the content, you got to think others will as well. And subscribe right here at the Voice of College Football. We got Zach Smith on the line, former assistant coach in college football, and of course with Menace to Sports. Zach, how's it going today?
It's going great. How you doing, Mark?
I'm doing well. Appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Let's mix it up first with the Buckeyes, and then we'll broaden things out toward college football. So as you were sitting there watching the national championship game, Georgia, Alabama, from an Ohio State perspective, what do you think was going through Ryan Day's mind?
I got to get there. It reminded me a lot of the 2012 season where we finished undefeated and couldn't go to a bowl game, and Urban Meyer went down to the national championship game and watched Alabama just dismantle Notre Dame. And, you know, it's invigorating where you sit there and you're watching what you want your program to be live in front of your eyes, right? You're watching defense the way defense is meant to be played. And it was really goals for him and his offseason moves and his future moving forward on the defensive side of the ball. And I think also a little bit of regret that he might have made some mistakes in hires or it just didn't work out the way he thought, because he had the offense to win a national championship. He just didn't have the defense. And so watching what Georgia built on defense, what Kirby Smart did, you know, over the last 3 years to kind of piece by piece put that defense together, I think a little bit of regret that Ryan didn't make the similar moves to try to make that happen.
Zach, I didn't expect to keep us back in 2012, but I got to ask you this. The decision by Gene Smith to take a bowl invite in 2011, when it's the Gator Bowl, you're Ohio State, it's the Gator Bowl, you're 6-6, best you can do 7-6. What is that profiting you, benefiting you, versus who knows what's going to be accomplished next year with Urban Meyer, who, by the way, has won 2 national championships?
Yeah, it was I mean, obviously hindsight's 2020, so it's easy to say it was a huge mistake, but I don't know how foresight was not 2020. When you're 6-6, what does that Gator Bowl get you? Not to mention they got beat by Florida. So it just
don't you have to go 6-6 the next year to reach a bowl game?
Right. I mean, it's wild. And you know, why not offer that serving up to the NCAA as some kind of peace agreement, and in hopes that, you know, Urban Meyer goes to a better bowl game. I mean, no one could have predicted we would flip that team to a 12-0 undefeated team. And honestly, as we're going through it, it was shocking that the streak continued, because we weren't an undefeated team, but we would have beat Notre Dame and we would have won a national championship. That would have happened. And so just unfortunate, I guess, that he made that decision, but it was definitely a mistake.
Zach, you're going to be the victim here of me wanting to delve into a lot of things like that and keep us back there in 2012 and in that time frame, because there's just so many things that are so intriguing. So I'm only going to keep you back there for a few more minutes.
All right.
Yeah, that 2012 team, I think anybody that knows football to any degree knows that, you know, barely getting by Central Florida and UAB and the likes, but knows that the team did develop and was getting better down the stretch. And I always found it to be intriguing, the comment that Urban Meyer made after the Michigan game, because he had downplayed the team's accomplishments before that, but it was all said and done there. There was nothing else to play for. So I still remember him being pulled aside and it being presented to him that you've said all year, Coach, that this was a good team, but not a great team. And he's like, no. This is a great team.
Yeah,
this is an all-time Ohio State team. We're undefeated, because, of course, he had nothing to lose at that point. He might as well sell them as an all-time great team.
You know, I remember that's the psychology in him, right? Master of psychology is Urban Meyer's real title. You can call him a great head football coach, a great football coach, a great offensive mind, whatever you want to call him. He's really a master of psychology. And I remember being on staff, all of us felt the same way. After the Michigan game, we went into the locker room and he came in, and all year it was brutal. It was brutal to work for him. Every position group was awful, except for Braxton Miller. And every coach was awful and didn't belong at Ohio State. And then after that game, he walks in the locker room and it's just like, you could see he was elated. And he sat there and he was like, wow, you guys did an unbelievable job this year. And he like looked at me and he was like, what you did, Philly Brown, Devin Smith, wow. And I'm sitting here like eyes open, like, is this really happening? This is the guy that has told me I was worthless for, 11 months. And now he's acting like we just had a great season and it was successful. So it was it wasn't just to the media. I'll tell you that much. It was to the coaches, the players. All of a sudden, it was like we accomplished something. And I think that we use that for momentum into the next season to improve even more.
2013 happened, the loss to Michigan State. That was, again, a good team, a really talented team, but the defense had its issues. We go into 2014, that's magical. 2015, was that Michigan State game kind of the watershed game in regards to that's the one that really got away? That team was so loaded, so talented, and when motivated, of course, blew out Michigan and Notre Dame. And they really should have played Alabama that year. That would have just been a titanic battle.
Yeah, it would have been awesome for that rematch to happen. And it's unfortunate. I think nowadays that team gets in because of how the committee has, everything's a moving goalpost. They change the standards to get in the playoffs every year and kind of their mentality on how they put teams in. But yeah, that's probably one of the best teams I've ever been a part of. And I think it was really just a culmination. It was something that everyone was every week nervous could happen because the offensive staff was completely disjointed. It wasn't operating at a high level like when Tom Herman was running it. And so it was something that everyone was nervous about. But literally, I used to walk into work every day and say, this is amazing. This team is so talented that we're going to win despite not having an offensive staff that is, at the standard of Ohio State. They were so good that it didn't matter. And in that game, because JT couldn't throw it great in the rain, it mattered. And we lost the game. And because of that, it robbed, the Ezekiel Elliott's and Michael Thomas's and those great players a chance to try to go back to back and get that and win that rematch against Alabama.
I don't know what it felt like on the sideline, but it was one of those games that was so slow and methodical that even at the 4-minute mark, I was sitting there thinking they almost can't win this game because they're backed up. They're not moving the ball. They're going to punt. Michigan State's only going to need about 1 first down, and they're going to kick the game winner. Yep. And you could see it play out.
Yeah, it was just offensive ineptitude. Not only did JT struggle throwing the ball, we came out the second half and just made a decision. We weren't even going to try. We weren't even going to try to throw it because he had made a couple errant throws. And at the cost of what I said afterwards on Sunday, like, yeah, I get it. He couldn't throw. He wasn't very accurate. Couldn't throw the ball well, whatever you want to say that day, but we're going to lose the game if we don't. And so we made the decision to try to just grind it out, run the quarterback, and hopefully sneak out of there with a win. And we kind of puckered up offensively play calling. And the drive you're talking about is a perfect example. I mean, we didn't even try. I mean, we were calling plays that we thought could get some yards, obviously, but there was no taking advantage of weaknesses of their defense. It was more just, we got to will our way to a first down to win this game. And obviously we didn't.
Zach Smith, Menace 2 Sports. So, Zach, give us an idea of what you got going there and where people can find you.
So we obviously have a podcast, Menace to Sports. It's anywhere you get podcasts. We have a YouTube channel that we're kind of I don't want to say relaunching, but we're going to kick back up next week. It's on YouTube, Menace to Sports. And then, Twitter, social media is the best place to find us just so you can see, because I don't even know what's next. I'm a football coach, Mark. I don't know what I'm doing right now, but it's turned into something. So we're just continually evolving.
Well, people want to hear what you have to say. There's no question about that, because you've got a perspective that very few do have. And we'll transition to 2022, folks. For as long as I could keep Zach here talking about the past, and I could fire a million questions at you that I would love to hear the response, we will get back to 2021 and 22. So Jim Knowles comes in, very successful defensive coordinator, made something out of Oklahoma State as a top 5 to 10 defense in the country. Now he takes over better athletes. We know Ryan Day's recruited better on the other side of the ball, but still this defense should be better. What do you make of the coaching changes across the board on that side of the ball?
Well, I think he did exactly what I thought he would do. And I think he really hit home run after home run, which is easy to say in January. They always seem like home runs in January, right? But I think they needed a change at offensive line coach, and they brought in Justin Fry, who is a good friend of mine. So I am biased, but he is truly the best offensive line coach I've ever worked with. And I think Ohio State fans are going to love him because he's a hard coach. He's a fundamental coach, and he's young. He can relate. I mean, if you look at UCLA's social media, there's a video of him rapping Rapper's Delight to the team, and like he just gets it, and so he'll be able to recruit at a really high level, which is something I think slipped at the offensive line position the last couple of years. So I'm really excited to watch that offensive line play this year. And then defensively, obviously, Ryan needed to just completely overhaul the defense. He needed to retain Larry Johnson at all costs because he is the best D-line coach in the country. And then he just cleaned house and started over a lot like he did when he took over, when he kind of pushed out Greg Schiano and Bill Davis and brought in Jeff Hafley. And it happens to head coaches. It's happened to Urban twice, where he just didn't make the right hires. And one side of the ball just kind of got disjointed. And you can blame Kerry Combs. You can blame all the people you want to blame. It just didn't work. The chemistry wasn't there. They're all great coaches. It just, as a cohesive staff, they didn't get the job done. So I think Jim Knowles is a guy that, obviously $2 million coordinator, he's going to have to produce. And I think he got the right guy for the job. You got to love his hires. The coach from Cincinnati coming in had a Thorpe Award winner. Sauce Gardner was probably as good or better than Kobe Bryant. And then I don't know much about Tim Walton. I know he's well respected and he's going to be a really good football addition. I sometimes I get nervous about bringing in a longtime NFL coach to come in because of recruiting, because of the youth of the players, having to relate, build trust. It's not a business like it was in the NFL. I know he's a great football coach. I know he has a great defensive mind, but I think there's going to be a transition phase and a growth period where he has to learn about college football.
Got Zach Smith on the line, Menace to Sports. You see the Twitter handle right there. Follow it right there to the podcast and right here on YouTube as they get the operation cranked up right here on this platform as well. Now I'm going to hit your sweets. You know what? I got one other thing about the defense. To simplify it as much as I can from a guy who's been in the media and is a fan perspective, when I watched the defense against Oregon, for example, it seemed like missed assignments, like they got out coached. Like watching on TV, you didn't even see guys in the screen. You saw Oregon running backs and you'd see them run that short edge play. And like, where is anybody? Like, this isn't being defeated from an athletic standpoint. This is like the scheme seems wrong and the assignments seem wrong. Then you fast forward to Michigan, and it seemed like guys are in position. They're not getting fooled. They're just getting bullied down the field and just getting pushed around.
Yeah. Well, that's definitely what happened. And, you know, I don't think it was a calculated mistake. Some of the scheme things they did defensively going into the Oregon game. I think the real mistake was there was no adjustments. I mean, you can come in with a plan and they may catch you. They may hit you once, right? And hit a 60-yard touchdown, but you have to make an adjustment off of that so it doesn't keep happening. And Ohio State, Kerry Combs made a decision. They wanted to press that boundary receiver to not let Oregon run the RPO little skinny post and just give up free yards. And so they pressed him. And then when he cracked the linebacker, he took two defenders. And like you said, there's no one in the screen. That's fine. They made that decision. It's not a dumb decision. I disagree with it, but it's one way to take away the skinny post. But you got to adjust. You can't let him run it two more times for another 100 yards. And so that didn't happen. And then you get to the Michigan game, and I think the defense was defeated. I don't know how aggressive they were being coached or how aggressive they were playing. I guess I do. We watched it, right? They weren't playing very aggressive. They weren't triggering. They were getting blocked. It just wasn't – there was no swagger on defense. To play great defense, you need like swagger. You need an attitude, and there wasn't any. And so it was very different. They did things different schematically, but at the end of the day, it's about triggering, playing aggressive, tackling. That's what defense is. You can run any scheme. If you do that well, like Georgia, you watch Oklahoma State's defense, they were unbelievable. The scheme was the scheme. It's a little different, but it was just, you watched them play and they looked fast. And you know they're not faster than Ohio State's players. They just looked fast because they triggered and they were playing aggressive. And so I think that's what was lost during the season with all the turmoil, the coaching change, the switching up the styles of defense and learning that on the fly. It was a mess. And it was probably, in hindsight, something that should have been fixed after the Alabama blowout. But I think Ryan wanted to give Kerry one more shot, and it didn't work out. And then we saw the end result.
Onto your sweet spot. This wide receiver room. Oh, my word. It's
stupid. It's silly. What Brian Hartline's done is unbelievable. Just in recruiting and development and everything. I mean, I said it. I said it on my show, and I believe it to my core. And Pitt fans are just outraged at me. But the kid that won the Biletnikoff, Jordan Addison, he would not start at Ohio State. He wouldn't have. He wouldn't have started in front of Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. And you thought there might be not a drop off, but just maybe some immaturity by Marvin Harrison Jr., by Emeka Egbuka, when Chris Olave and Garrett don't play in the Rose Bowl. And there was nothing. I mean, those kids just. You talk about giving people something to talk about this offseason. It's going to be unbelievable. And he's just stockpiling the room. And with the transfer portal age, that's almost an impossible thing to do, but he's doing it. So he's showing you that where there's a will, there's a way, I guess.
People jump to conclusions. You probably get at least, if not more, Ohio State fan feedback than I do, because I speak to all fan bases. And so I got a mixed crowd here. But after Minnesota and after Oregon, there were those Ohio State fans that, CJ Stroud, this guy's not good enough. Get rid of him, bench him. And I was in the I don't know mode. I was in the I got to see more. I got to see. Are you kidding me? He's never thrown a pass at this level before. He's on Fox, a national game on a Thursday night against a pretty good Minnesota defense. Then he's got to step in against Oregon. He didn't get the Akron game, the FAU game to break in. So what kind of development did you see from him throughout the season?
Well, I think, I was one of those. I wouldn't say I was a naysayer. People are, especially fans, are extremists. If a kid isn't playing, as the best in the country at Ohio State at the quarterback position, they just think he's awful and needs to be benched, which is just absurd. The kid, he played well. He just didn't play up to standard. And I think both can be true, right? It can be that he's not awful. He doesn't need benched. He's just not playing as well as maybe he should. And then what happened was he took a week off plus a bye week and got healthy and developed a little bit and came out, absolutely scorching earth. He was the best quarterback in college football. He's better pure quarterback than Bryce Young. He was throwing the football. There was no comparison. But now Bryce Young was a better player. He made things happen. He scrambled around, he ran around, and he made some decent throws. But I think CJ he showed development and growth, and now he's going to have the most critical offseason that a player has had when it comes to mentality, willingness to run, toughness, those things that he didn't necessarily show this year. If he can add those to his repertoire, you're looking at a Heisman Trophy winner.
Yeah, that ball that he threw to Jackson Smith-Njigba to the right corner from he's on the left hash, it's like, is that Aaron Rodgers out there? Right.
And I'm going to tell you what, the more impressive throw, to me at least, was to Emeka Egbuka on the left sideline, because as a receiver coach, that's how I see everything, through that lens. And Emeka Egbuka, young kid, doesn't have game experience. He runs a go route, and he left CJ Stroud 6 inches to drop the ball because he's so close to the sideline, which you can't do as a receiver. But apparently with CJ Stroud, you can, because he had a 6-inch box 40 yards downfield, and he dropped the football in there. And I literally was like, whoa, that's one of the best throws I've ever seen. So the kid's so talented with his arm. And when he figures all the rest out with an offseason with Mickey Marotti, the leadership, the presence, even in interviews, complaining about his shoulder, and that stuff's got to go away. You need a grown man, a warrior leader at quarterback. And if he becomes that this offseason, he's going to take college football over.
Taking over college football right now are 2 or 3 different topics: NIL, playoff expansion, transfer portal. So we'll start with the playoff expansion because it's closest to the field. And where are you on this? What would you like to see? What's your playoff proposal?
Well, in reality, I think it's going to happen. So we all just need to accept it. It's a matter of when. I don't understand. There's a couple of things I don't understand. I don't understand who's on the playoff committee. I think there needs to be a college football aptitude test, because you go through, I did a whole show breaking it down. They have an energy company CEO on the playoff committee. It's like, does this guy understand? I don't even know if he knows football, knows what a zone run play is. How is that guy deciding who should be playing for the national championship? So I think they need to retool that before they worry about anything, is figure out who are the right people to make these decisions. But because it's inevitable, I think I'm all for the 8-team playoff if that's where they want to go. But in reality, they got the playoffs right this year. They got the right 4 teams in. Ohio State didn't belong there. Notre Dame didn't belong there. And so we're going to expand it, and I guess maybe get a Cinderella upset, which will be fun to watch. But I think it really comes down to, people look at the Rose Bowl and some of these bowl games and they think, no, there's nothing, that they don't matter anymore. when I view it differently. I think they matter. It's just shifted. It's changed. You look at Ohio State's Rose Bowl, that game mattered to Ohio State and Utah. And Ohio State is, traditionally a playoff team, so it shouldn't have, by the same school of thought. But I think you need to look at bowl games more as a preview to the 2022 season, where they go on the Rose Bowl. You're going to see some young kids play. You're going to see CJ Stroud get to kind of build momentum into the offseason. And so I think that what those bowl games are has changed. The meaning hasn't diminished. So I'm for expansion only because I think it's inevitable, but I don't think it's necessary. I mean, the 4 teams that got in this year were the 4 that were probably going to be in the final 4 of an 8-team playoff anyways.
People that detract from the bowl games need to still understand that people watch bowl games.
Oh yeah.
I worked at ESPN for 19 years. People watch bowl games because I think a lot of detractors, they look at the empty stadiums and think, well, nobody cares about this bowl game. Well, no, it's 2 schools that are 2,000 miles away, and there's no real interest locally for that game. That doesn't mean that's not where they make the money. They make the money on TV and with sponsorships. People still watch the lowest rated bowl game still outranks any college basketball game in the regular season by far. People still love bowl games. And that Rose Bowl, that ranked as high as the Cincinnati-Alabama playoff game in the ratings and wasn't far behind the Michigan-Georgia game. So,
And you know what? I think it's easy to blame the playoffs for all that. I mean, there was a lot going on, right? Flights were getting canceled. California has unbelievably strict mask mandates and all this other. I think a lot of people were like, I don't want to spend all that money and then my flight get canceled, or I get out there and it's just a miserable experience. And so I think that's more what it was than the Rose Bowl doesn't matter. It's just Utah. I think it was more what's going on in society right now than anything.
NIL. So my basic stance is I want the players to be able to profit just like anybody else can. It's a free society. They should have the ability to do that. Unfortunately, for the greater good, it seems to be getting out of control. Where do you go with this?
Well, I mean, like everything else, I would have done it entirely different. But in typical NCAA fashion, they just basically said, hands off, like, you got it. We want nothing to do with this, and just left it to college football coaches. And in the history of college football, it's always been the same. Whatever the rules are, college coaches, college programs, boosters, they're going to try to find loopholes, find ways to push the limits so their team can benefit. So you have to put strict guidelines and rules around it, or else they are just going to push it to the edge of the cliff and off. And you look at Texas A&M reportedly spending $30 million to sign a recruiting class. That the minute it came out, that was the first thing I said. Watch out. They're going to create slush funds to be able to sell to recruits. You will make X salary if you come here. And then it's going to become a financial decision for a kid, not a decision based on fit or coaches or programs or universities. So where they go from here, outside of just shutting it down and creating actual guidelines, like a kid has to be on campus to even consider an NIL deal. That should be number one, so that you take recruiting completely out of it. Recruiting is already shady enough. Now you've given these bag men legal money that they could give kids, when before it was all kind of through churches and under the table. And now it's like, no, I can just bring the briefcase right to your school. So that's the first thing they have to do. They have to get NIL out of recruiting and get those kids on campus first. And then I think they need to play a game before they sign a contract, because otherwise you're paying a kid based off name, image, and likeness that hasn't played college football yet. And so it's all projection, it's all inflated. And I think it causes so many problems with cultures on teams and different, personalities. I just think it's the most mismanaged thing I've seen in my lifetime in sports.
Zach, as you know, there's a certain pride, a certain feeling that fans get when they know, hey, my guy always played at blank school, Ohio State. You can look at Zeke Elliott in the NFL, and every NFL game when they go through the players and where they went to school, Zeke Elliott, Buckeye, fill in your favorite player. Now that's disintegrated into nothing. So the transfer portal, again, I want to give these guys the freedom of movement that we all enjoy. But at the same time, there has to be, people liken it to NFL free agency. It's not like NFL free agency. Only about 8% of the players in the NFL are free agents. The rest of them are under contract. And number two, there's a set period of time of free agency so that there can be roster management. But this is just the wild, wild west.
It's nuts. It's nuts. I mean, when you look at Caleb Williams is a Heisman front runner going into next season at Oklahoma, a blue blood is going to jump in the portal. It's all about money, right? You just announced today, Jermaine Burton, the best receiver at Georgia, who just won a national championship. Now he wants to transfer. And you can't explain to me why, because that never happened before. Kids that transferred were kids that weren't playing or it wasn't working out. That's what the transfer portal should be for, right? It's for that kid that, you know, maybe he either made a mistake or it's just not a good fit, and he wants a second chance at a college football career. That's what it's for, and that kid shouldn't be punished. He should be allowed to go transfer to a different school and try to revamp his career. The Joe Burrows of the world. That's what the portal was for, not for the starting quarterback Heisman Trophy candidate to jump in the portal and see who's going to offer him the most money to come play at their school. It's all NIL driven that ruined it. I think the transfer portal was a good idea. It's just instituting NIL and the transfer portal at the same time with hands off, no guidelines has created an absolute nightmare in college football.
Zach Smith, Menace to Sports. Track him right there to his podcast and also right here on YouTube. It's a top 50 podcast on Apple. So please check it out. It's a really insightful stuff, funny stuff, and they get into it, and it's a good time. Zach, we appreciate you stopping by. This was a great conversation, and thank you so much.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on, Mark. I appreciate it.